We are back coming to you from beautiful Orlando, Florida. And this reminds me why I like Florida. Man, we're staying just at some little hotel by the edge of a golf course, and you go outside and there's like tropical birds hopping around and flowers everywhere. I like this. I like Central Texas. Austin's great, but it's been in a drought, and it's kind of like living in the middle of a Western movie or something. This is more like living in a jungle, so I love it. Good to be here with everybody under the loving eye of Disney. All right, I need to start getting into the news for all of our listeners out there, but getting into positive news, we have to stop, and I'm going to talk about this in my speech tonight, letting the gatekeepers, just because they've got a fancy teleprompter and a fancy suit, or they're the big talk show host authority, dictate reality to us. And say, you can't talk about this, you can't question authority, or you're a conspiracy theorist. If you question known government liars that have been caught lying thousands of times, if you don't trust big, mega, giant corporations that are in control of governments worldwide today, then you're a bad person for questioning them. No, that's what made America great, was questioning and not trusting government. What did George Washington say? Government is like fire, a dangerous servant and a fearful master. Now, they've said that the Southern Poverty Law Center and others would demonize somebody like George Washington today if he was alive. Well, they don't do it just because he's alive in our hearts and minds. They do it. FEMA, the rest of them. I have the videos in films like Road to Tyranny that police officers and others have sent me, where it shows FEMA actually demonizing the Founding Fathers. And they had articles in Philadelphia newspaper just a few months ago, and BBC picked it up, asking the question, is the Declaration of Independence illegal? And they said, yes, it is. Because it says you have a right to overthrow a corrupt government, and the government now says you don't have that right because they're God. It's about government dictating to you, and Madison Avenue and this whole manufactured plastic culture telling you what to think, how to dress, how to speak, trying to turn you into a plastic person. And so on the left and the right, these big globalist foundation-controlled shows have told you there's no corruption, that's a conspiracy theory, don't be involved, there's no global government, there's no CFR, there's no New World Order, there's no plan, for international banks to take over. Now they admit, open world private government taking over Europe by mega banks that put their people in charge of those countries. And I talk about this ad nauseum because it's the key. Open world government being announced. And because we didn't care about being attacked for decades, exposing what the real agenda was, and because Ron Paul didn't mind being attacked, because we all knew as it came out in the open, as this agenda expanded, people would then finally listen. And now because it's out in the open, people are listening. And we're moving into check, and the next move is checkmate against the globalist. But that doesn't mean that they can't put us in check or checkmate as well. We're in the fight. That's the good news that I can give you here today. Let me give you one example of this. I'm going to move on to contemporary, important, big breaking news right now. You remember 15, 16, 17, 18 years ago or so? I remember when I was first politically active 20 years ago, the mainstream media would come out to people like Pat Buchanan and others and say, you shouldn't be running for president on defending the Second Amendment. Nobody wants to take your guns. Remember back when they would say, no one wants to take your guns, we just want to ban all the semi-automatics and make you turn them in and have waiting periods and make you lock them up in your house and not have one in the house if you've got children. How many people remember 20 years ago, back when the mainstream media, who's not even mainstream anymore, they're the dead dinosaur media, would say, oh, we just want reasonable gun control. We don't want to take your guns. Remember that? You remember it. Okay, exactly. Everybody remembers it. And they still try it some today. But all the quotes of the Brady Center and the handgun control groups and all these people, they all bragged in their own documents that it was the individual abolition of firearms ownership. The UN on July 7th, 2000 put out an official report in New York at a convention they had, a meeting, a conference, a conclave. And they put it into UN law that their goal is global disarmament of the public. Here's the quote. Civilian ownership of any firearm threatens the legitimate power monopoly of the state. They believe a power monopoly of government over you, absolute dictatorship of the state, is legitimate. But the point is, they want your guns, and they're saying total abolition of individual ownership of guns. And the minute people stopped having debates about, oh, just be reasonable, let us restrict it some, and then come back a year later, let us restrict it some more. Oh, no, as soon as we got angry and took action, they're even repealing gun laws now in Canada. They just repealed the long rifle or a long gun registry last week, because they passed a gun registration and started using it to confiscate guns, and the public got angry and took action in a system that's much harder to affect change. And it was the first major gun law in the world outside of the U.S. reversed in the last 100 years that I know of, and NRA and Gun Owners of America said the exact same thing. The first victim disarmament piece of legislation reversed in a century outside of the United States. Think about that. We've reversed a few things here, but the first one outside of America, that's what I call 1776 worldwide. If we're going to be free, we got to have freedom worldwide. And the idea of freedom is so cool, so sexy, so hot, so awesome, so fantastic, so powerful, so alluring, that when you stack it up against tyranny and corruption and insider crony anti-free market capitalism, when you stack freedom up against that, we win. So everybody that thinks it's impossible to defeat the globalists, it's impossible to lose when good men and women stand up and take action. I cannot stress that enough to you, that we have got to take action, and more of that coming up in my speech. We're having so many victories. Every time people stand up and bring the real medical literature about fluoride in our water and the 7-fold increase in bone cancer, and the fact that the government's own scientists say take it out, that the special eugenics interest wanted added to increase cancer and reduce fertility. In every city where people resist and resist and resist for at least 3 years, it's removed. And just a few miles away from us in Pinellas County, right at 1 million people, Tampa is in that county, they removed fluoride from all of the water supplies. 60 years of globalists spending money, millions of sometimes, to get that into the water, because they love you so much. And all over the country, all over the world, in Calgary, Canada, they just removed it. In areas of England, in Europe, they're removing it. They're removing it all over. Now, the globalists have struck back. The globalists came in with millions of dollars in New Jersey and Arkansas, and they're trying it in every state right now, and have now passed mandatory fluoridation by law. But now it's not just a recommendation or a contract. Now they're demanding it. Now it becomes a civil rights issue of forced medication of the public. And so they're going to lose in court now. And now government openly wants lithium in the water and statins. We told you that was in documents years ago and showed you. Now they're openly pushing it. We'll be right back with the build-up towards war with Syria and Iran and a lot more. Stay with us live in Orlando, Florida.
You're listening to the Alex Jones Broadcasting Network.
Monday through Friday from 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. Central, and we come back Sundays, of course, 4 to 6 p.m. Central. That'd be 5 to 7 right here on the East Coast. And then, of course, we have the weeknight, 5 nights a week, InfoWars Nightly News. And when I'm not in town, Rob Dew does it. He does the news and anchors it, does a great job, or John Bown, or Aaron Dykes, or Paul Watson, and, of course, Darren McBreen. The great part is our researchers, our reporters, our video editors, they also host the Nightly News. This isn't about sitting up there in the fanciest suit looking credible. It's about being credible and covering real information, and we're expanding and building our news organization thanks to all of you and your support and the great folks at the Big 810 right here in Orlando. I really am excited that all of you came out, and that for the first time in 50-plus years of this great auditorium, it is completely overflowing, sold out. hundreds. Amazing. Liberty is popular. By the way, I'm going to have, again, a local talk show host in here. He was telling me about this a few days ago. I was a guest on his show, and I went and looked up the news articles, and it turned out it was true, but I still found it shocking. Doc Holliday was telling me that they have whole highways shut down for the NBA All-Star game, and that they have checkpoints, even in the business districts, and that they're blocking off the local businesses so they can't get any of the traffic, and that they have motorcades for the NBA people. I actually saw one driving over here. I sound like Porky Pig. I'm speechless here. There were probably 10 or more motorcycle police, like it was the president or something, for a bus of NBA people driving down the highway like it's the road warrior, and the citizens are going to attack them if they weren't there protecting them. Meanwhile, our tax money's paying for it. I checked. Your tax money here is paying for it, just like you pay for the billion-dollar sports stadiums, and then you're charged overpriced tickets, you're treated like garbage, and you pay for the motorcade protection from you, who's paying for them to look and act important. And that's what this is all about. I've seen presidents, like when Obama comes to town, they shut down whole highways. I've seen him with like 50 cars protecting him like he's, God or something, landing in town. It's absolutely ridiculous. And all of it is done so that you see these leaders as actually leaders and not the puppets they are. While the real power elite, like the Rothschilds, the Rockefellers, and others, do everything they can to hide their wealth. Every time David Rockefeller gets up to give a speech, he goes, "I'm just an old retired banker. I'm so honored that you're giving me this award." And then you find out he set up every globalist organization out there. "I set up all the eugenics organizations, and I want to reduce the population. I'm just an old banker." All right, continuing here. You remember 8 months ago, well, a year ago, they overthrew Hosni Mubarak, the dictator that the banks that run this country, because I don't want to say we put in, but the people that took us over for the banking and government system, the folks that put him in charge to torture and kill tens of thousands and all the rest of it. I'm not saying Hosni Mubarak's a good guy. The point is, the crooks that run our country, the foreign banks that have hijacked our nation, they put him there. They would send people there for him to torture, including American citizens, at the, quote, black sites, secret sites, ghost sites, as they call them. And then they overthrow him. They send in the CIA and State Department people to overthrow him a year ago. They put the Muslim Brotherhood in, and they actually put Al-Qaeda connected groups in. And now they're taking women's rights. Christians are being persecuted, and lecturing me that I've got to have the government take my rights, spy on me, grab my genitals at bus stops and train stations now, not just the airports, and take all my rights because Al-Qaeda is such a threat, while the stinking criminal banker-occupied government is putting Al-Qaeda in. But they didn't stop in Egypt, getting out their old dictator and putting something in even worse to destabilize the country. Then they go into Libya, start bombing it for 6-7 months, killing over 35,000 people. They bring in real Al-Qaeda. They fly up Al-Qaeda flags. Al-Qaeda is with the special forces calling in the airstrikes. They now admit it's Al-Qaeda, and real Al-Qaeda, and now they're sending them into Syria with 3 proxy armies attacking Assad, who, again, I don't like Mubarak, I don't like Gaddafi, I don't like Assad. These are guys all that started working with the West. That's why they got set up. It shows this. The globalists want total destabilization and craziness to then have new wars with the Al-Qaeda forces they put in later. This is full spectrum dominance, where the globalists launch these wars so they can take the rights of the Arabs and of the American people. You see, the banks sit above it, playing both sides off against each other. This is such a classic tactic of divide and conquer, of divide and rule, of balkanization. And now they are announcing, U.S. to announce aerial blockade of Syria, Haaretz, Jerusalem Post, Ynet News, they're all reporting U.S. readies for possibility of intervention without UN resolution. Oh, last time they got the UN resolution for the peace action, like the UN's the boss. Of course, that's a puppet the bankers set up to begin with. And it goes on, citing U.S. military official, plan to include humanitarian aid to Syria refugees on Turkish border. So an invasion is not a war. Tens of thousands of bombs dropped, blowing up apartment buildings, shooting people, ethnic cleansing of the black Libyans that the media now admits. We first reported that when Webster Tarpley was willing to actually go over there under bombardment and drive in out of Tunisia, under bombardment.